It's a simple question. At what brewing temperature does white tea taste best? Let's test. Hello everyone, this is Dimitri from nannuoshan, dedicated to the spread of fine tea and tea culture worldwide. Today the focus is white tea. Now, I really like white tea, and I feel that it's often in the world of a lot flashier teas, whether it's pu'er or other heicha, or interesting oolongs, even really vibrant green tea. White tea sometimes gets lost in the balance, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. One, just it's not necessarily as flashy, but the other one is that it's not that easy to brew always, or rather, there's quite a bit of mediocre white tea that's exported to the West and in general that's out there. So it's easy to come across kind of a mediocre example, and even a finer example when it's not brewed really, really well, I think tends to come off as lackluster. But I found some really just excellent white teas when they're brewed well. They're just out of this world. And it's the winter time now as I'm recording, and I often find myself drawn to those like gentler, subtler flavors, a little bit floral, a little bit sweet, very grounded and mellow at this time of year. Sometimes right before bed I enjoy it. Not that it has less caffeine, mind you. It's a bit of a myth, but just the flavors I find relaxing. So I think it behooves everyone really to give white tea, if you're not already like a fan, to give it a good try. And so the aim here today is to see particularly how temperature affects brewing tea, because I think the other thing that I've noticed just practically is that many white teas have two very different characters. One when they're brewed cooler and one warmer. Some startlingly different. And so I want to see what kind of difference that makes. Temperature seems to make the most difference, so we're going to restrict ourselves to looking at how to brew white teas in terms of that. And we've had other tea experiment videos. Gabrielle's made several, including how to the best water temperature for tea in general. That's across all kinds of tea, and generally how to find the best water temperature. And that's a good resource to figure out, if particularly of a tricky tea, to look at it and figure out how to tweak the temperature parameter for that. And that's great. I think you should take a look at it. I want to focus today, however, on white teas and their specific differences, at least as I see it. There's also a nice tea experiment video on playing with leaf quantity and steeping time, how those variables are related. But yeah, again, today we're going to restrict ourselves to just one, which is temperature. So we have some standard, everything else is more or less kept the same. From my experience in general, I find that the cooler water, relatively speaking, so like 80 degrees, tends to result in more sweetness, whereas warmer water, 90 say, ends up with a little more starchiness, if that's different, a little more starchy, more flavors of hay, sometimes more spicy, or if there's a bit of smokiness in the leaves, some teas have a little, just an edge of that, or a sort of wild, verdant flavor, a little bit woody. That seems to come out with more heat. So that's the hypothesis, and I haven't really carefully tested it out. So I wanted to get on the tea experiment action and try that in front of you for the first time, as well as providing a resource how to test it more at home for yourself and with the teas that you have. Today we're just going to be looking at two teas, so there's at least a little bit of a range, but hopefully that's better control than one, but it's not a huge range. So we could look more. And in particular, I might say I don't know how much this will apply to aged teas. That ends up aged white teas. That may end up being a little bit more of a different dynamic anyway. Without further ado, let's introduce our main players. On my right, I have a bunch of our Yue Guang Bai, or Moonlight White, from this year, this past year, 2022, which is one of my favorite kinds of white teas. And we've also done a video on Yue Guang Bai specifically, not this one, but a batch from a couple years ago. Take a look if you're curious about this tea type. It's really interesting, and generally, I've said before, I don't tend to keep favorites, as it were, but if I had to pick one white tea, I kind of would go with maybe with the Yue Guang Bai, even above a Yin Zhen, which can be more floral and really more amazing, but it's also a really great value. And this one has these crazy big leaves. Look at that. And this one, I mean, I get excited by just the appearance of this. These really long, distinct hairs. So this one was harvested in 2022, as we said. That's about almost a year ago. On my left, we have what we're calling the Indian Peony. It's a Bai Mudan style, hence the peony from Darjeeling, specifically the Tindaria tea estate. And this one was harvested in 2018, so it's a few years old. It's not very aged, but it's a few years old now, and it's a bit of a different character than young one. So we're not directly comparing equivalent ages or just across types, but as a Bai Mudan style, a few years old, it's quite different in many ways from this Chinese really long-leafed tea from Yunnan. So we're going to take a look at both of these, and I've already, to start with the Yue Guang Bai, put several grams in each of these three containers. So I'm going to start my timer and explain how this experiment is going to work. I'm starting with 60 degrees here on the left, and we're going to increment by 20 degrees. So the middle one will receive 80-degree water, and the right one a whole 100-degree water, which should be pretty intense. Please excuse the noise that the kettle's about to make, but couldn't be avoided for this sort of live action excitement. That should be pretty intense for these, and I'm going to brew them all in for 4 minutes with 1.5 grams of leaves to 130 milliliters for each of these tasting mugs. And if you haven't seen these before, these are commonly used by tea tasters as a kind of mini teapot that kind of scale down the effect of a teapot and give a good average, let's say, for the tea flavor. And start my second, oops, we're going 70 here, we go 80 degrees, we start the second timer here. All right, ready to roll these approximately a minute apart. I'm keeping track of all the time so that we be as scientific as possible. This is not the most scientific of experiments, but we're going to try and keep to some kind of method here. And yeah, I recommend you do use whatever tools at your disposal to try and control your variables accordingly, and see what kind of results you get. There's really many to consider, particularly across different tea types and ages and cultivars and exact methods of processing. So all of the above. All right. excited here. Oh, and surprise off-camera grab. I've also prepared from the night advance a cold brew of each of these teas with about I put like 2 grams in I think 160 milliliters of water and left them overnight. In fact, by now it's probably, I think it's been 18 hours, a little bit more than 18, maybe 20 hours, which is quite long for this proportion. They should be pretty intense, just to give another completely different aspect. Not that it's, you know, the season for cold brew. I tend to prefer that more in the summer. It is literally snowing, just started snowing outside, but it gives us another perspective. And many white teas, like some other teas, get a different kind of character when they are brewed cold. So actually I'm going to keep that over here, along with surprise little pitcher. Deal with that. And we're coming up on 30 seconds for this tea. The leaves don't look like, they just look like they've leaves floating in water. The hair, kind of like an otter's pelt, is almost keeping them isolated from really steeping, or for the water from really penetrating into the core of the leaf. So I expect something very light out of here. And we're at 4, 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Whoops, splash one. These are best fitted directly in like that. Let them do their thing. And when it's finished, pulling them off. That is a pale infusion. That's quite pale. Though actually, I mean, it's looking good for white tea. That is why they're called white teas. Sometimes when I would say overbrewed, they tend to be browner, a little bit like orangey brown. But to me, that's a good color for a white tea. I'm very curious at 60 degrees to know if there's, I mean, I guess something has come out. A minute ago, I thought it probably barely brewed at all, just the water wasn't getting in, but I'm very curious. And I'm going to go ahead and take a sip. Sweet, mild. There's a little bit of like a vegetable starchiness there. And now it's time for the next one. But actually, that's pleasant. It's just a little bit mild. I don't think, yeah, I might like a little more body. And in terms of aroma, not so much as coming off. I think this Yue Guang Bai, what I really like in the type is a sweet aroma that reminds me of vanilla or even marshmallow, which doesn't necessarily sound pleasant to people who are crazy about marshmallow or candy things. But it's in this case, it's this starchiness with a bit of sweetness, a mild florality. It's really nice, and I just go crazy for it. Plus, often there's a little bit of a woodiness, and that in conjunction with the sweetness is just a wonderful flavor. That's why I really love Yue Guang Bai. In general, when it works like that. This one, as I recall, often the first infusion doesn't quite have that. A little more of the woodiness, and the second one it really hits. But hopefully that will come out in at least the 80-degree version, which is kind of my favorite temperature for that. Though you can do 90 degrees also works. I think you get a different character like the other teas. Let's see what they're like. Yeah, there it is. Oh man. Okay. I wish you were all here right now so you could taste it. I mean, if you manage to, maybe in the future, some time, come taste this white tea. I can't say any more than that. You gotta taste it. 80 degrees. That's how I like it, though. Maybe you prefer more woodiness or starchiness. Let's see what 100 degrees has to offer. First of all, it has to offer the cup is hotter. So, and we'll see if, you know. I mean, I feel a little on the money with my prediction. I think it's distinctly, yeah. I mean, woodier would be fair, but starchier, I think, as compared to this one. This one actually does have a thicker mouthfeel in a way. At least at the moment, it seems like quite viscous and a bit starchy, and that's also something that I like in the tea. Maybe this one is thicker, but actually more than woody per se. This tea tastes little vegetable, like almost sweet corn. That's kind of what it is, but not quite as sweet. No, maybe, not as sweet as sweet corn. Maybe the sweetness here is also there. However, it's being a little covered up by this other flavor, which is not unpleasant, but it's different. I think this is what is to see, so to speak, in this tea. This is like the main attraction. That one's also quite pleasant. Really, they're all pleasant ways of drinking this tea. It kind of depends what you like in your tea. For me, Goldilocks here. This is just the ideal one. I'm gonna finish. Just drink this off and try also the cold brew here. It doesn't seem like it's gonna go very well. I will preemptively do it like this. I generally practice what is referred to as wet gongfu-cha, so no surprises if that doesn't quite work out, as it were. Now I'm wondering if these leaves need to be a little bit wet, kind of breaking this one in. None of it's going to the pitcher. Maybe they need to be a little bit wet to go through, or maybe this tea has special properties. So I'm going to do it rough style. Actually, this is how I should have done it, like this, and then that into the cup. But it's also okay if there's a few particles. This is probably going to be quite, I expect this to be a little bit intense just for the time-wise, but I'm curious to see if it's also really sweet like other cold brew teas that I've had before, or what is here. I do not know. Wow. Okay, so that's a question of time. This tastes exactly like shiso leaf. Exactly like shiso leaf. If I didn't know better, I would think this is a shiso leaf tea, or like a juice that is extracted from without temperature. That is uncanny. Learn something new every day. This Yue Guang Bai tastes like shiso when it's cold brewed. All right. I'm going to take a pause here and reset everything with a little bit of the Bai Mudan, our Indian peony, rather, Indian Bai Mudan. So, be right back. And we're back. I've just brewed up all three of these teas to have a look. They've just all finished. And by the way, if you like what we're doing here, want to see more tea experiment videos and other kinds of content, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to be informed about new videos, and let us know in the comments, what is your favorite white tea? How do you like to brew white teas? And any other topics that you'd like to see for an experiment. So, all through here we have a range of colors, a color spectrum here. This as a Baimudan style from Darjeeling, as we said. It's generally going to be a little more in the spicy hay-like direction. When we first got it, just after it was produced, it was quite lemony. I don't know if there's really any of that left as a character that tends to disappear, but if there is fruitiness, as there would with a Chaumet, I would expect more of the fruitiness to come out with a higher temperature. And this one normally is better kind of at 90 degrees, somewhere in between these two. So that's what I expect. Let's see if that's really the case. Starting from the cold. 60 degrees, very mild. Yeah, a little bit thin, a little bit of thick starchiness there. Again, not unpleasant, but ever so slightly watery, and it's nice, but I'd say lackluster really is kind of the word that comes to mind. Not that exciting. Here should be a little more interesting. More full-bodied. Interestingly, still not a huge amount of flavor. Actually, the impression that here was slightly more interesting. There is something that comes out there. Maybe a little bit of that sweetness is in the Yue Guang Bai. This is not bad either. It's a little bit neither here nor there. This also has something to it. Maybe these two need to just cool, the liquid needs to cool down a little bit to be more appreciated. There's also the character of how a tea tastes at different temperatures, but that's kind of a whole different topic. Yeah. It is a bit starchier. It's not a lot stronger. I'm a little surprised that there isn't quite as much of a difference between these two as I expected. In terms of overall character, yes, there's a distinct difference, and certainly from the appearance you can see that there's chemically, whatever is in here, there's different amounts of stuff. Stuff being a technical term for compounds that probably cause flavor and texture and other things. I'm struggling a little here to quantify the difference, the extremes. This is certainly milder. This is more of something. Yeah, I think this tea would definitely. The other parameter here is not the most exciting, the proportion of leaf to water. With a steeping time, I think it could have a little bit more time to get a little more of its character in. But relative to one another, I think this is the... I feel like I can say that this is more woody. That's what I expected, so a little bit of a bias there. But where I am surprised is that there's not quite as much of a difference here as I expected, and that I don't mind this mild one. And it's a little too watery. However, let's just double check with the cold brew, which I guess, is the last one we can expect to be very intense. Just going to sort of do it this way. And there. You can really see it's actually, in a way, the darkest color here. So it's probably not representative of a more diluted cold brew, the character you have there, but hopefully we'll see something else that we wouldn't expect to see when brewing hot, particularly with as hot a water as this. Bottoms up. Also shiso, but different, not pure shiso. Mintier. It's like a really nice experimental, you know, like pesto type of thing, like shiso and mint and a type of pesto. This inspires me to make something cuisine of those ingredients that tastes just like this for maybe, I don't know, maybe more of a pistou, like to put on top of a soup or spread on something, or toss a pasta with some nice olive oil. It's a super surprising flavor to get a tea. It shouldn't be surprising. Mint, shiso are both leaves, and this tastes like another kind of leaf, but I don't think I've ever tasted anything quite that intense. For this, I think we can say that it is, there's a bit of astringency now, but it is not hay-like. That's definitely, I mean, that's not really here. Certainly not as much. This is certainly not brought out, even kind of over steeping in this way. The hay-like character, or as much of the real woodiness as comes out here, even though, as I said, actually for those two flavors, this is pretty mild still, and it could use a little more time. Yeah. I'm still gonna go that this is better in this range, but also extremely interesting as a cold brew. I think you should try all the white teas and all the teas. Give them a cold brew treatment and see what happens, because really interesting things there happen with different temperatures, as we've seen. So it's hardly the definitive answer of everything, and I haven't even pulled out my professional tasting scoop, so I can do this. Proper aeration, which slightly changes perception. So it's hardly the be-all and end-all of experiments, and let alone not the most rigorous, but that's a framework of how you might do the same experiment like this at home. Set up your kettle, 3 identical pieces of teaware, and you can also use a gaiwan, and brew them successively like this, or even in one gaiwan, doing over a couple times. Yeah, well, I hope that has been informative and interesting, and I hope that we can continue to do more experiments like this. Let us know what you want to see and are curious about, and do try this at home. I will see you on another day. Goodbye.